This book, I lost my mind reading. What is happening? So let's get back to the syphilis. Hello, creeps. Anna here, and Mosley. And today we have a very interesting video for you. Okay, let's just get into it because I have no idea what's going on, and this is just gonna be a strange ride that I'm excited to take with all of you. So I had this brilliant idea. Sorry, I'm gonna move this. Mosley does not want to be my co-host anymore. He said these books were too strange for even me, and I can't even read. So I had this brilliant idea of trying to find books that had the most offensive, inappropriate book titles. And I thought that this would be an interesting video to make. And it was quite interesting. I purchased these novels and I read them just for you, honestly, for my own curiosity too. And I have no idea what the last week of my life has been. Quick disclaimer, I am definitely not an expert on the type of books that these are. I can only give you kind of like my literary interpretation of what's going on. This was my first time reading some books like this, maybe not forever, not in my whole life, but definitely in my own personal time where I was just analyzing text by myself. So I'm definitely not going to have all the answers for you. In fact, I'm probably going to have very few answers. And here's the thing, I could do research and look these books up and see what they mean and this and that, but I feel like the whole point of my videos is just to give you the interpretation of what I read and how I feel about books. So I don't know how helpful it would be if I did a bunch of research and told you what something's supposed to mean, because you guys could do that yourself, you know? So these are just my ideas of what I read. Now, a warning, okay? These books are offensive. These are going to be offensive titles, hence the title of this video. So if you are sensitive to stuff, you might want to skip this, but just know that these books are purposefully written to make you feel a certain way. They're there to make you feel uncomfortable. This first book we have here, it is experimental literature, and I'm not gonna be able to say this one probably, but this is the title of the book. And it may be about this or it may not even be about this. So I guess what I'm trying to say is I hope that if you're here and you're watching the video, I hope you'll just keep an open mind with these books and we can just be mature and discuss them as literary texts, because that's, you know, that's all I ever want to do with my life. So this is by Urs Ullmann. It was originally, I believe, published in German. This book took the second place in a 1991, I'm gonna butcher this, I apologize, Ingeborg Bachmann competition, and quickly became the center of one of the biggest literary controversies of post-war era German-speaking Europe. It says also that the reaction to this award was swift, as Austrian politicians demanded that the prize be rescinded because of the text's subject matter, which is quite interesting. I mean, we've seen this throughout history. I mean, we see this today, right? Books getting banned because of the content of what's written in them. And it is kind of interesting that something can both win an award and then also cause so much stir because of its subject matter, which I believe in itself proved that literature can make you evoke emotion, and that's the purpose of it, right? Like, this book is not meant to make you happy, it's meant to make you feel a certain way. There's also this one quote in here which I liked. This is still in the introduction. It says, "We think despite ourselves that literature is about things or people or events. It is about these things, but never only about these things." This book is about this subject, but it is also about literature's ability to affect the reader, which I thought was a very interesting quote to read before going into this book. So, okay, that being said, what is this book about? Maybe about this, maybe it has nothing to do with this. To be honest, I don't really know. So we have this main character who I always said was a man, but now that I'm thinking about it, I don't think that we get a gender for this person. I think that they are just like this unnamed, faceless narrator. I don't think that we ever know who or what they are. We have this first line in the book. I will be reading you quotes from here. They don't go into crazy detail or anything. The most intense line that I'm going to read you is this first line that just says, "I blank babies." You know, I'm sure you can figure out what I'm talking about. That's really where the extent lies. And again, I do hope that you'll stick around and have this conversation with me, because I don't know that this is even what this book's about. I have my own theories, not saying that they're correct, but but I do have my own ideas about what the book's about, and I do have textual evidence to support those claims regardless of whether they are valid or not. Okay, so the first line here says, I blank babies. Around my bed there are creels, they're swarming with babies, okay? It's written very stream of consciousness-esque. I will absolutely be reading you a few little lines and quotes and paragraphs here and there, just so you can see the weirdness of this book. Like I said, it is experimental literature, and I have read experimental literature, particularly in college, but not, I don't think, on my own just to read for fun, just to analyze a book. So this was a really unique experience for me. We are also told that there's morphine in the milk that this person feeds the babies. It says, they used to always scream, now they're always sleeping. I mix a little morphine into their milk. We are also told that there's a vat of morphine that this person supposedly has full access to at all times. This is all going to come and wrap back around, but I'm going to have to jump here and there, and it's going to seem weird and out of place, but that's honestly how the book is written. So just bear with me for, you know, a few little random quotes here and there. Okay, I will read you this about the morphine. There appears to be a vat of morphine in my garret, a barrel of morphine with morphine powder, with morphine brew, my torso. I roll around in the morphine powder. I could dip my morphine tossed body in the morphine brew until the day. Instead, I soak babies, drug them, blank them. Sleeping babies, haven't been screaming babies for a long time. So that's just kind of how this is written. There's also this quote. Again, this is just kind of to give you an idea of how strange this book is written. It says, Linda. So Linda and Paul are two characters in the book, the only two characters, and we'll discuss them in a second. But it says, Linda, a word that calls to mind wells, trees, songs, graves. There's also, I don't think, any commas in this book at all. So sometimes the subject matter in the sentences get confusing, and you kind of have to read it a few times. It takes you a second to try to understand what's going on. Okay, sorry. Linda, a word that calls to mind wells, trees, songs, graves. Makes me want to puke in the well, to puke on the grave. Oh, I won't puke though. We'll eat something though, but what? Maybe some frogs. From where? From the bucket. How did they get there? Don't know. They are there, flourishing, ribbiting. They would have to be drugged with morphine brew, morphine powder, ribbiting. That is how this book is written. It's honestly an interesting read in itself, just to, you know, I mean, it's crazy. It's like 80 pages long. No. Well, it's 130 pages, but this book particularly has the German version and then the English version as well, which is cool. If you know the German language, you can read the original text, but obviously I cannot do that. Anyways, aside from that, there's a lot of repetition in specific sentences, particularly that I blank babies, and that it has always been that way, or that that sentence is his only sentence, or their only sentence. Keep that in mind. There's this, I blank babies, therefore maybe I am. I thought that was maybe an interesting thing to look into. Then we come to this page, and to be honest, I really don't know what to make out of a lot of these. He's in a garret, which at first I thought was kind of a jail, and there's a mail slot or some sort of slot where he gets mail through. So I interpreted that as maybe like a jail where they can slip food into him. But then he says, does Linda stare at me from the iron ladder or the balcony, through the window, through the rolling shutters that are always rolled down? Does she write me letters? Does she call me? Does she visit me? Does she try to take the babies away from me through the slot in the barricaded garret door to shoot at me? So at first I thought it was a prison, and then I thought, okay, maybe not. He does describe that there's a window, and he describes it like a TV or a cinema, but he says that reality is on the inside. Then there are some quotes like this one. I blank babies, that's my sentence. I don't have any other. Someone like me can't be dragged out of a memory. From the two memories that he may sometimes treat himself to. Okay, maybe it is a he, or maybe he's talking about someone else. I really don't know. My sentence, it's what I have, it's what I am. I have to be dragged out of it by me. So it seems like maybe he's reliving memories, potentially? I don't know. But then also he says, I blank babies, that's my sentence. I don't have another. I thought that was, like, that's an interesting thing. Like, that's maybe all he's seen as by society, by this Linda and Paul. I don't know. And then I thought maybe he was in some sort of mental institution. He does talk about morphine, and that's a drug used to get you off other drugs. Maybe this is like his morphine induced fever dream. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. There's so many different ways I think that you could read and interpret this text, and I don't know if there's an answer to it. But it says, Linda called, claimed that I'm sick, predicted my recovery. So I thought, okay, maybe he's in some sort of mental health facility. But then the word Garrett is so oddly specific. I think it's like an unfinished addict. So then I'm like, is he stuck in someone's attic? I don't know. There's just a lot going on in here. Then we have Linda and Paul. And Linda, it does seem like he has some sort of connection to. And I guess I didn't highlight any specific quotes, but he does talk a lot about Linda calling him, writing him letters, visiting him, talking to him. And so it seems like there is some sort of relationship. Paul seems to have less connection to our main character. And I'll get to my hypothesis as to who these people are in a second. But again, when we were talking about that repetitive language, there's this sentence, there might be a slight misunderstanding, that comes up every once in a while. So keep that in mind too. There's also some imagery that's constant in the book that I just don't know what to make of it, like this ladder outside the window. There's also paper, a lot of talk of paper, him writing a story, Linda giving him paper, paper being there. We have this here that says, Linda claims that I was once a baby like her, like Paul. Supposedly, I once had a name, like Paul, like her, looks like her, she brought me a mirror. This, I thought maybe was to indicate that, and again, I also don't know if I'm trying to make meaning of something that doesn't have meaning. You know what I mean? It's experimental. I don't know if it could be interpreted in different ways, if it just is what it is. I truly don't know. But I took that as maybe Linda could be a mother. She certainly has like a mother-like, she is a mother-like figure in the text. So the fact that looks like her made me think that she brings a mirror to show that they are potentially related. And then you have this, by Linda, by Paul, by a baby without a name, without a memory, without an age, without a face, without a story. I thought that was interesting as well. And now let's get to kind of what I think is going on here. Here is this sentence, okay? He also says, sometimes entertain the thought that I'm crazy. And he says this a few times too, which makes you think that he doesn't believe that he's crazy. Maybe that's how other people see him. I'm not really sure. But then we have this sentence, and what if it's a mistake, a mix-up? What if I've been saying that Paul's sentence the whole time? And this was like the huge turning point in the story for me. And I thought, what if he is either being blamed for Paul's mistakes, issues? I don't know what other word to use in this case, you know, without saying the actual words. Or I thought, what if Paul is like a brother or a father figure, and this is what happened to the main character, and that's why he feels like he doesn't have a story, a name? I don't know. That's just my thoughts on what the fuck is going on. Otherwise, I can't tell you. I really don't know. There's this quote here, Paul's worm, Paul's worm, Paul's worm slowly growing towards me from every direction. It's no longer necessary to pull up the shutters, to push the button on the egg box. They're creeping out of the shutters towards me, out of the frog bucket, out of the painting, out of the milk spigot, out of the morphine vat. I don't know. Could I be making something out of nothing? Yeah, absolutely. Or could there be something here? That could also be true. There's also this quote, I'm made of babies, they're made of me, we should say we to each other. And I thought maybe that he's, you know, using the babies as a way to discuss himself. I don't know. I really don't know. The title and the content is obviously made to evoke emotion. Curious if you guys have read this book, what the heck you make of it. Curious if you guys haven't read the book, if you will read it, or if you have any idea of what you gather from just the things that I've told you. But either way, could I be completely off on the analysis of this? Yes, absolutely. Could I read this book 100 times and come up with a new meaning each time? Also, yes. And could I also be trying for a deeper meaning that isn't there? You bet. It could also, yeah, it could not be about anything. It could be about a man who literally is just doing this. I don't know. I truly don't know. But I enjoyed the ride. I did think that this was quite an interesting story. Like, I really did think that the way it was written, although not a normal story, I think I got enough from it that made it an interesting read. And yeah, let me know what you guys think about experimental literature, about books like that. Let me know. Let's move on to the next one. This one is just our plain old extreme horror book. It's called My Vagina Smells Like Sulfur. And this is from C. Commissar. This is, like I said, an extreme horror novel, and the warning in the front is so funny. I have to read this to you guys. I was actually cracking up. It says, the title does not refer to the author's vagina. The author's vagina does not smell like sulfur, nor is the author a doctor. If any vagina smells like sulfur, it may be wise to seek medical attention. Maybe, who knows? The author does not know. I just thought that was funny. I love the warnings in extreme horror books. They always crack me up. Okay, so what is this story about? This one is just more of a basic horror, extreme horror story. It's about these snuff films that are made for the dark web. Yeah, there's your typical torture, horror, gross, vile, nasty stuff. Again, it's there to evoke emotion. You don't see this title and don't get any emotion from it. You know what I mean? And so I think it's cool that a book can kind of grab your attention with just the title. And I think we're seeing this a lot more, or I am at least seeing this a lot more recently, where these horror books have these more outlandish titles that really do grab your attention, and they work. I want to read them. So anyways, I wrote that this book is about using hot sauce as lube and putting unsavory items into sensitive ... holes. So yeah, you get things like rocks sewn into women's genitalia, and flamethrowers be used, or torches be used in people's rectums. So just your typical snuff film torture kind of shenanigans. Our main character is named Midnight, Madame Midnight, and she's the one that runs this show. Sorry, I don't know if I explained this well enough, but Midnight hosts a show on the dark web that has a bunch of snuff films in it, and the name of the show is the title of the book. And she wants it to be like, she wants to breathe new life into the dark web. And her idea is to have people send in videos of them offing themselves, and the more intense way that they off themselves, the more they'll be rewarded in the afterlife, is what she tells her audience. But they come to figure out that that's not that great of a business model, because if all of your audience is offing themselves, there's no one to actually watch the show. So they're kind of brainstorming different ways, and different ways that they could rework the plot of their show. It did remind me a little bit of Talia. So if you do like that book, you might like this one. Not the way that it's written, but the subject matter. They're both about snuff films, and they do kind of turn into revenge stories near the end as well. My only issue with this one, really, I mean, I didn't have strong opinions of this one either way, but my issue was the main character. From the beginning, she has such a commanding presence. She always talks about how this is her thing, her show, and she wants it her way, and she's just like this strong, powerful, badass woman, or at least she wants people to perceive her that way. And then by the end, they turn her into this ditzy, dumb blonde character that says things like, much gooder at his job, and you're just like, that was not the character that was at the beginning of the story. So I really do wish that the character just was more consistent, either with that badass persona in the beginning or the dumb blondness at the end, because they just felt so very different to me. That was kind of my only issue. This one, did I find deeper meaning? No. I mean, was it just like a vile, dark, extreme horror story? Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with that. Different reads for different audiences. If you like extreme horror, if you liked Talia, you probably would like this story. So this is a note from her at the end of the story. It says, fiction is the key word here. Fake. I do not, nor will I ever condone real life violence. Many social media outlets are painting splat authors as bad people. And I do think that that is important to say, that this is just art, and art can be all different forms. Even if it's something like this isn't splatterpunk, this isn't extreme horror, but it's still fucked up, and it's someone's art, and who's to say what's appropriate and what's not? I mean, you can say what's appropriate for you, but I think it's fun to joke around and like, oh, this should be illegal, this is awful, this is horrible, but everyone should also, I think, have the freedom to publish what they feel is necessary for them to write. So I really liked this kind of end thing from her. She also says, it's no secret that my imagination was partially formed via growing up watching horror flicks in the 80s. Also loved that. Title that extremely grabbed my attention, and yeah, I would definitely read more of her work. Okay, next up, Irene's. Now, guys, If the first book felt confusing to read, this book I lost my mind reading. I can't even tell you what the fuck this book is about. I truly can't tell you what this book is about. And I mean that. Like there is no plot that I can tell you. If you read a synopsis, it says that it's about a man who's obsessing over a fictional woman's genitalia. That is not what I read. I don't know what I read. So this is a book that was published in 1928 by Louis Aragon. He is a French writer, and this is labeled under erotic literature, but it also is labeled under surrealism. And he is supposedly one of the founding members of this movement of surrealism in literature, which I thought was pretty cool. And Albert Camus called it the finest of all works touching on eroticism. So I'm not trying to discredit this book at all, and I'm not trying to say that there's nothing under the surface, but my puny brain, I did not understand what the fuck was going on in this. But Albert Camus is one of my favorite writers, or his book The Stranger is one of my favorite books. So if he's giving it the thumbs up, it's probably cool for some people to read, you know? Just maybe not for me. So what is this book about? I don't even know. And there are cool quotes in here. Before we even get into what this is, let me just read you this quote, because I think this is actually a really beautifully written quote. It says, "Even so, no one was rapidly deafened by the noise of billiards, for as bad luck would have it, the room had an unfortunate echo that applauded the breaks." I thought that that was such a cool way to describe that situation. There are some that are funny, like this one. "The worst thing was that damnable dick of mine." There's this guy, I wrote, he has dick problems. He's having a lot of sex dreams, and he decides to just go to a brothel. Now, he has really interesting ideas related to intercourse. He kind of just sees going to a brothel like a means to an end kind of thing. So anyways, he goes to this brothel. They finish in like 2 seconds. Not hating on him, just that's just what happened in the story. Afterwards, she shows him to like different keyholes that he can look through to see other people in this brothel doing their thing, and he's just like not here for it. He ends up leaving, and that's really where the story ends, that I can tell you. No, it's not where the story ends, but it's where the like that part is written so straightforward where you know what's going on. Here, I wrote this. I said, reading this is like madness with small intervals of clarity. I think that's actually like an Edgar Allan Poe quote, isn't it? But that's what reading this felt like. You get little bits of understanding, but as a full narrative, I had no idea what was going on. He also, this one says this line, "A head cannot remain empty." I really like that quote. Okay, so he starts talking about this old man. Let me see if there's any quotes that I can read you before we get into like what the actual fuck. Okay, he says, "The erotic idea is the worst mirror. What one glimpses of oneself in it makes one shudder." We'll come back to the syphilis in a second. But let me just read you this quote, because again, I think it's written well. "Already agile syphilis, and he won't know anything about it for another fortnight. It is stretching deep within his bloodstream, ready to sketch strange red flowers on skin and livid lizards in the meanders of his nerves." Like there are very beautifully written scenes. Let me just read you this paragraph, because I think this kind of sums up what I'm saying, where it's like, it makes sense, but then it also makes no fucking sense. "He clings to the fall of leaves, and do I know quite what the avalanche of sparks means to him? Watch him pass the wind of his thought with his fists clenched around a bouquet of dead leaves. So what does he want with such corpses? The absurd comparison of his life to a year's passing does not suffice to explain that surprising the grotesque tableau we're in. Contrary to law of gravity, the wretch's feet, far from touching the ground, turn nimbly up towards the cloud. The contents of his pockets escape thence, and there's another autumn more singular than the trees. Small pencil stubs, scraps of paper, letters from indifferent people, samples from the winter. Practical joker, I wasn't talking about the shroud. A shred of ribbon, a pen. Reflect upon the autumn of your pockets, my friend, of the telltale pockets when, in the tunnel of the image, tracked down by in comparison, you empty them out onto the train door. It's too late. It's your heart that flies off. Your heart detaches from the forest trees. So where then has the child gone who has used to ask his mother for hearts from which to play at knuckle bones in the night?" Okay, so like, do you get what I'm saying? It makes sense. Like, I get it, the contents spilling out of his pockets, and like, you know, I guess that's like a reminder of his past, and like, where has this child gone? And I get it, but then I don't. Like, my puny brain just does not understand this text. If I had 100 days to sit down and analyze this word for word, no, I honestly probably still wouldn't know what was going on. So let's get back to the syphilis. There's an old man But then he also talks about syphilis, and I don't know if the old man is the one with syphilis or if it's the narrator with syphilis, okay? Then, okay, so we have a grandpa, there's a farm, there's this woman. The woman is the one who the narrator is obsessing about. So is it someone who's related to him, or is it an imaginary person? I still don't fucking know. He says of this old man or of the guy with syphilis, or if they're the same person, I don't know. For no less than 40 years now, I've been riveted to the sphere of the passions while they gnawed at me without destroying the damn thing that separates me from the world. So he still has his desires and his wits about him, but he's no longer able to communicate. I also don't know if Irene is the daughter of this man or the great-granddaughter, because I think both have the name Irene. I'm telling you, like, I'm so confused. One sentence here talks like, yay, syphilis, and then it transfers to a soliloquy about fish. Then it breaks the fourth wall talking to the audience, and then it talks about this sex scene. Like, I have no idea what's happening here. Now let's get to my favorite part. Okay, so there are a whole lot of euphemisms for the female genitalia in this book, and I wrote some of them down to share them with you, to bestow them upon you, because I was dying of laughter reading these. Convulsive cubbyhole, pursuing cavern, this place of delight and darkness, patio of ardor. This one's my personal favorite. Dear dizzying abyss. If that is not what should be used in every erotic tale, strike me dead, because that is amazing. Dear dizzying abyss. All hail to thee, pink palace. And also pale casket. These euphemisms range throughout the book, and I just thought that this was hilarious. And I, from now on, demand only men write about female genitalias, because that was fucking hilarious to read. Anyways, I wrote after that in all caps, what is happening? I still didn't know. I wasn't sure. There's much more description of Irene and her mother and her family life and this farm than I ever envisioned. And I don't know, again, if this is supposed to make sense or if surrealism is supposed to be like so nonsensical that you can't even follow a plot. So I don't know if this is to indicate that the syphilis has kind of taken over his mind, and like, I don't know, it's almost written like a fever dream sort of thing with these brief intervals of clarity, like I said before. So again, I'm sure it makes sense. I'm sure there's a reason for it. Dummy Dummerson over here does not get it. I thought that it was more about this woman who he's obsessing about living in his memory, and not that she wasn't real. He says, like, sometimes I try desperately to see you by shutting my eyes, or just the opposite, by opening them very wide upon the darkness of the room. And then I'm like, oh wait, did he write her? Because then he talks about writing, and so maybe I had to go back and reread this because I was so fucking confused. So I don't know. And here's my conclusion. I have no idea who contracts syphilis, if Irene's family is real or made up, the point of the book, or what the fuck I just read. I truly don't know. I'm so sorry that I cannot interpret this further for you or make sense of it, but I just could not get there. There's also a bonus story in the back called The Adventures of Jean Fuck the Cock. I did not... Oh my god, what is my life? What is my life? What is my life? How did this become what I do on the internet? Okay, that's it. That's all I've got for you. Let me know if you guys have read this. I'm very interested, and I am, interested and willing to learn what this book is actually about, but I have no clue. All of these were interesting. They gave me something different, and yeah, let me know if you guys want a part 2 of other disturbing books. Let me know other disturbing titles you think I should check out. Otherwise, thank you for going through that fever dream of these books with me, because I have no idea where I've been for the past week. And thank you so much for watching. I will see you soon with another horror video. Bye, guys.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear that the thoughts build up until I can't hear, that my mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper.